So today's video topic is how I overcame narcissistic abuse and what that journey was like personally for me. Somebody asked me this recently and I thought it was actually a really good question, and I'm doing this video because I don't really know what the answer is, and that's worth saying up front. I don't know. I know that in the last 2 years my life has changed completely. Everything looks very different. I have a completely fresh outlook, and I don't know exactly what the one thing was that kicked it all off. But I can think of certain key moments, certain key things that happened or that I did that really helped me. That's the first point to make. The next point to make is to say that, look, it's not any one thing. It's not an easy process to overcome narcissistic abuse. And the reason is that it's one of these problems that is extremely complicated and is not external to us. It's not outside of you. You are part of the problem. As your study and learning and experience and working through the subject increases, you will realize over time more and more that you are a participating part of the abusive and or narcissistic cycle. And I'm using narcissistic more in the layman's term right now to mean any the umbrella term for any abusive style relationship. You are a willing participant. Now that's provocative as a statement, and it's provocative language because it implies that you consciously or semi-consciously have made a decision to enjoy being tortured, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you were primed for abuse, and that when I say you are willing, we are willing, I was willing, it's because my will itself had been corrupted. The software was carrying a very heavy virus. So I was willing, without getting lost in a philosophical sort of digression on the subject or trying to pull apart the semantics of it, which will lead us nowhere. There is no answer to these questions as to whether the human has free will or not, and honestly I don't find those kinds of philosophical meanderings particularly interesting, because it doesn't help you put your socks on in the morning. So it's kind of fun to stretch the mental muscles, to debate, to argue, and but it's not really going to move your life forward in any realistic sense. I encourage people to adopt a philosophy, and I encourage people to be philosophical, but to be philosophical in a way that is brutally honest and practical, and that is not just a meandering episode of a series of mental masturbations. I mean, it's pointless. So as you're thinking about this subject and what you've been through, what needs to happen is that your worldview actually needs to change. One of the big changes that happened for me is, and it wasn't like one day I was enlightened about this subject. We talk about red pilling, and then it's a reference to that dramatic moment in the film The Matrix where Neo's given a red pill and he wakes up from the pod. The pod is a very good metaphor for narcissistic abuse, especially if you were born into a narcissistically abusive family. So you're born into servitude, you're born into slavery, you're born with the slimy pipe down your throat and one up your bum, and this thing, got pipes everywhere just feeding off your life source to keep this cold, faceless machine running. It's a horrifying vision. And if you like being horrified, there was actually an offshoot of the Matrix movies called not Matrix Revolutions, but I think it's called Matrix Revelations. It's an animation. I think there's like 5 short stories that are related to the Matrix, and one of them is a horrific representation of the war that was fought between humans and machines, where the humans lost and the machines actually took over, and the process of getting people into pods, it's just awful. It's absolutely it's a cartoon, but it's I find it really disturbing. Somebody mentioned on the Facebook profile, the Spartan Life Coach Facebook profile the other day, about how these, once you realise what's being done to you personally, you start to realise about what's being done to us all as a collective, collectively, you know, at a political level. And I said, yeah, that's why they say the personal is the political and the political is the personal. An abusive relationship is an abusive relationship. Slavery is slavery. Brainwashing is brainwashing. You know, somebody drinking your milkshake, drinking your, you know, your life goo in a matrix pod for their benefit, not for yours, because that's what you were born into, is true at the collective level as it is at the individual level. Again, I don't want to drift off here, but the Matrix showed us one very dramatic scene of sudden awakening, where there was a literal inspiration. You know, inspiration meaning the sharp indrawing of breath. The tube, he actually pulls the tube out of his mouth and goes, and it's cold air for the first time into his lungs. You know, obviously in the real world, you know, he would just die immediately because he wouldn't have an immune system that would have grown and all the rest of it, and it would just kill him. He would just die of shock. If you've been raised to the age of 30 years old in a pod and then you're pulled out of the pod, you'll die. You're not walking around and going, oh my god, I know Kung Fu. You're not doing that, you're going to die. But it's a good metaphor. The metaphors are important, hold that thought. Storytelling is important, hold that thought. The narrative we build is important, hold that thought too. That's 3 thoughts you've got to hold. They're kind of similar though, so put them in the same place on the corkboard in your mind. The map of reality has to change, and it's not one red pill, it's like 15 red pills, and it doesn't all come at the same time. And sometimes a red pill is too much, and we do blue pill. It's a really horrible graphic metaphor again, that I'm going to use it. It pops into my mind, and it keeps me amused, so I use it. As somebody, I was asked recently about fantasizing and dissociation. And I was like, well, I spent all of my childhood daydreaming because it was awful. It was such an awful... my daily reality was so gross and offensive and unfair and torturous that, yeah, I disappeared into fantasy all the time. I was a totally... You know, I've talked about how I think I had elements of avoidant personality disorder. I certainly had social anxiety disorder. And dissociation was an amazing skill set of mine. And I would live most of my time in a fantasy world, or try to. Well, that's the blue pill of the Matrix. That's people consciously saying, I don't want to live in a tin can eating protein porridge with a bunch of scruffy people dressed in sackcloths who smell bad. I want to go back to living in a world where I don't know the difference between reality and fantasy, and everything seems cool, and Cypher chooses to go and be a rock star and eat steak. Now, when I was discussing this with somebody recently, I was like, yeah, I do that. I can't take, I still, to this day, I can't take reality full on and, unabridged and without something. I need that blue pill. I need it in small doses. I need it in liquid form. So sometimes I'm like sort of teasing myself inside of my own head, and it's like a blue liquid, and I'm going, okay, I'm now disappear. I disappear off. I fantasize and pull away from reality, or I see something that is brutal and it's in my face, and then I go, okay, I don't really want to think about that right now because there's nothing I can do about it, and all it's going to do is get me upset. So I deliberately pull away from it. It is necessary to be able to do that. So my point, rambling around the subject here, as I frequently do, is that it's not one revelation, it's a series of revelations. Okay, cool, got it. Thanks, Richie. You could have said that in one sentence, I know. But the storytelling is part of the process. Can you, via a series of YouTube videos, help people to overcome the effects of narcissistic abuse just by telling them silly stories, doing silly faces, making silly voices, and introducing elements from films, philosophy, psychotherapy? Can you help people? Answer to that question is, yeah, apparently you can. So I take this project, this experiment, as a success. Why did I do it like this? Because what helped me was a series of stories, little bits of, evolutionary psychology, a sprinkle of biology from over here, some even like astrophysics and some quantum physics were elements of what helped me get better. It's a lot, is my point that I'm leading up to here. it's not just one revelation. It could be like 15, 20, 25 revelations, and then you'll take 2 steps back. You'll take one big red pill and go, oh, okay, give me some blue pills again, and then you go back. You still have to move forward. You're always going to move forward. Like, that was a discussion I had last night, where it was like, do you miss, for example, in this discussion, I was being asked if I miss Spain, and I'm like, yeah, I miss Spain. I miss it a lot. You know, it's like an ongoing love affair I've had with the country since I was a kid. I was actually raised in Portugal from a young age, but at the age of, I think the first time I lived in Spain for any length of time, I was 15 years old, and I just fell in love with the place. I've told the story on this channel before that when I was much younger, like maybe like 9 or 10, I was taken to Spain for the day across the border from Portugal to Spain on a boat. At a time when there was the Portuguese man-of-war, which is a type of jellyfish, but it's not really a jellyfish apparently. It's like 3 entities that live together, but it doesn't really matter for the purpose of this video. Filled the river between, like they were wall to wall with jellyfish. I remember being on this boat and my dad like explaining to me that if I fell in, I would certainly die from all of because the man-of-war, the Portuguese man-of-war jellyfish thing is pretty bad. Like, yeah, you would die if you fell in there. You can imagine, like as an adult, if I saw that, I'd be horrified. The boat was cutting through these jellyfish, that were, it was literally, you couldn't see anything other than jellyfish. I'm sure like a marine biologist will be able to tell you if you go back to like 1986 or something, yes, there was this huge spurt in the population of jellyfish there. And it was the same story where I was telling you that like I went to a zoo in Spain and watched a fox jump onto a bench and off a bench and onto a bench and off a bench. And I said, you know, why is he doing that? And my dad was like, well, he's held captive and he's gone crazy and he'll do that until he dies. And I was like, this whole day sucked. This is a really sucky, horrifying day. I would like to go home. So we were discussing Spain and memories, and it's like, it's never the place. You think it's the place. Your brain is telling you the place, but it's the place and the time and the people and where you were at that moment in time. When I was a kid and I loved Spain, I was a much smaller person. So I can't go back to that time because I've grown beyond being that person who could feel that way about that place for those reasons, if that makes sense. And also that our memories will deceive us. Hey, he's using one of those NLP post-hypnotic tactics right now to talk in metaphors about how our memories and our brains fuck us up sometimes, isn't he? He's sneaky. God damn it, he's so sneaky. He's doing it, but he's telling us he's doing it at the meta level, so it's like meta hypnosis, and he's making a joke out of it, which actually doesn't make it not work, it makes it work even more, so your brain is going to go, oh, some of my memories are what is locking the problem in place, and your memories will lie to you. Now, do you need to go and study a course in neuroscience and give up a year of your life to understand a basic principle that your memories aren't real? They're not reality. They are memories. They're reflections of a reality. And that your brain at times doesn't always serve you because it can't. It's not developed to deal with the complications of our modern environment. And that this is a problem. The problem of narcissism, if you cluster all the cluster bees together and say bad folks, bad people, is a problem that's been around for a long time. People within the collective have realized that human beings, as monkeys down from the trees, not that long, historically speaking, we only recently drifted off the savannas, we can be tricked. And the way to trick people, dun dun dun, is to lie. Is to lie. Is to exploit. Is to cheat. Is to rob. Is to kill. You know, I think that even I sometimes wonder, without wanting to project too much of my own thoughts and feelings, if some of the original Bible stories are actually, as we know, like the Bible is just a series of books written in different languages from different periods of time. Some of it's parables, some of it's wisdom, some of it's philosophy, some of it's trying to be historical, but you know, whatever. But if some of the stories are metaphors for trying to understand narcissistic behavior, exploitative criminal behavior, the story of Cain and Abel, you know, how one brother could make a decision in his head and go, hey, you know, if I killed you with a stone in your head, my life would be better. I would get more stuff. I would get more things. Why shouldn't I do that? Why shouldn't I just fucking kill you with a rock? I think I'm going to kill you with a rock. And then I'm going to lie about it afterwards so that I get more things. The other Bible story, the book of Job, that's a great one for trying to understand abusive narcissistic behavior. And it was actually somebody on through conversing and chatting with people on YouTube, somebody pointed out to me because I had said something about another Bible story, and he said, yeah, you might possibly be starting to get it. Go and read the book of Job again and read it like it's a comedy. Read it like it's a really biting satire or a farce. And if you read the book of Job as a comedy that is about, I'm going to say it, hold on kids, it's Old Testament, not New Testament, so don't get cross with me, because we all know the Old Testament is pretty fucking freaky. Even if you're a devout Christian, you've got to admit the Old Testament isn't very Christ-like. The book of Job sounds like, God sounds like a narcissist in the book of Job. He has his vanity leveraged against him by the great deceiver Satan. God tortures one of his most devout followers because Satan dares him to. What? Like if I wrote that as like a play from scratch, Christians would go crazy, but it's already right there in the Bible. So I think there's been an effort to try and deal with and process this kind of thing for a long time. And for some of us, like, it then gets into genetics, because people say, oh, there's something called the warrior gene out there. And it makes some people very aggressive and exploitative, and if they want to get something done, they'll Machiavellianly, I don't think you can use that as an adjective like that. Or was that an adverb? Doesn't matter. They'll Machiavellianly, that's an adverb, push people out of the way and even kill them to get to what they want, because the end justifies the means. While the rest of us are going, dude, that ain't cool. There's like morality and stuff. You shouldn't really do that. And so for us, as these naive people pleasers, as Abel instead of Cain, we're going like, dude, we're brothers. Like, why would you even do that? It totally sucks. And you can't get where they're coming from. So that then shakes your worldview from its foundations. Overcoming narcissistic abuse isn't just a series of revelations, isn't just a series of apocalypses. It's actually a series of upgrades, and it's not just one. Like, you can't overcome narcissistic abuse with one software upgrade. A simple software upgrade, like what would be... When you're a teenager, at some point you get a software upgrade that we'll call parenting 1.1, which is, oh, my parents are humans, just like me. They were young once as well. Maybe not as a teenager, maybe you're a little bit younger. Maybe around 11, 12, you start to really internalize that they don't know everything, that they're just people, that they, so there's an example of an upgrade. Adult 3.3 is a software upgrade that you should get at around 15, 16, which is that all adults are not infallible. They actually make mistakes, and they make them a lot, and they lie and they cheat and they steal, even as they're telling you what to do. If you don't get that software upgrade or the other one, you're at a disadvantage in life. Another software upgrade that comes later would be, realizing that you don't have to do as you're told, and you don't have to play by the rules, but that you should because X. And that's the formation of a morality. And in my personal philosophical beliefs, you can't really form a proper morality when you still live at home, when you're still financially dependent on other people. You've got to have the power to truly be making your own choices, to have any real morality. Because of the way society goes nowadays, that, in my view, means you ain't really an adult until you start, because we now have universities and it's quite normal for people to stay living at home because of the recession until they're 27. You're now not really a functioning moral adult, in my view, until 25, 26, 27, where previously you would have been by the age of 18, 19, 20, because you'd be out of the house. You might even have your own family by the time of 20. You might have 2 kids by the age of 20. Mind blown. I could barely blow my own nose at age 20. So, You need a series of software upgrades. When you've been raised in a narcissistically abusive family, he said, using the term rather frivolously, in an abusive, codependent, not boundary respecting family unit that will encourage avoidant personality disorder, self-loathing, massive amounts of toxic shame, and the capacity to be guilt-tripped. You don't get these software upgrades because they're kept from you deliberately. The borderline mother or father, you should maybe look at if you get time, and you should study. Like, you can't just study narcissism and get over this stuff. You can't just study borderline and get over this stuff. You've got to go out and study psychiatry and psychotherapy. I was I was no dummy when I started on this. And as far as psychology went, I could hold my own. But even to this day, like, I'm learning so much stuff related to psychology. You've got to study, and you've got to study deeply. And you will be getting, as an adult, all the software upgrades that you should have got as a kid that you didn't, because if you were in a narcissistically abusive relationship, 95% of the time you were primed for abuse, because people who have proper ego boundaries won't tolerate narcissists. They don't even take them seriously. They don't even acknowledge. They wouldn't date them. They wouldn't marry them, because they don't even see. They're like, no, that person's ridiculous. Whereas we are like, oh no, they're kind of shiny and fascinating, and they give me an adrenaline spike because they're exciting and charismatic and blah, 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 blah. And the bullshit we feed ourselves because we've internalized the abuse. We've been a mushroom, kept in the dark and fed shit all of our lives. And then when we leave home, we do it to ourselves because we learned to do it. Like, if you got whipped every day at 4 o'clock for all of your life, if you then suddenly left home and you weren't being whipped at 4 o'clock, you would probably get a whip and do it yourself. Now, you're sat there going, that's a silly metaphor, Richie, nobody would really do that. I think that they would. Film reference, we love them. Shawshank Redemption. Introduced the idea to people who didn't know anything about prison that sometimes when people leave prison, they kill themselves. They kill themselves because they got used to prison and being outside and having free choice and not having to ask somebody when you want to go to the toilet, and having total free choice over what you're going to eat and what time just drives them crazy. It's too much. They can't do it. So abuse gets internalized and we repeat it. I made a point earlier, you might have caught it, that your brain doesn't always serve you. It doesn't work like that. Your brain isn't like an onboard therapist, life coach, enlightened bodhisattva. It's just trying to survive, and it's using old primal patterns to do that we then need to restructure. What? I'm telling you, you want to overcome narcissistic abuse, you need 15 revelations, all your software upgrades from when you were a kid that you didn't get, and then several ones as an adult from now up. You got to go, like, you got to elevate your consciousness. That was deep. That sounds a bit pretentious, but I genuinely believe that for you to overcome narcissistic abuse and get back on with your life, you have to expand your consciousness. You become not like in a groovy hippie sort of like I'm one with nature way, in a sort of a dirty, gritty street way. You got to really like the perverse flavour of Slavoj Žižek. You've got to appreciate the flavour of a Patrice O'Neill. You've got to appreciate the flavour of people who, at first glance, you might be like, they're not happy and healthy and sane themselves, but there is a frequency, there is a level, a style, an agenda, an awareness, a consciousness from which they're speaking that you need, because they're telling the truth. These are the revealers. There's an expression in Islam, which is a kafar, and a kafar, is usually and wrongly used to mean non-believer. In South Africa, when they dismissively call or racistly call black people kafir, it actually comes from the Arabic term kafar, because the Muslim population, when there was slavery, it was Muslims, either black or Arabic, were taking kafar, non-believers and selling them to the white man. The white man didn't go into Africa and steal people out of tribes. It's actually been shown that way in films, but it didn't happen like that. Damn it! Just because I'm white, I didn't do it. I think my white guilt just came up then. We bought them. We bought black slaves who were, they would have been pagans, animists, believers in other religions, non-Muslims, kuffar, which then became kafir. Kafir is kuffar, and kuffar was usually, and even to this day, is translated as non-believer, but it doesn't mean non-believer, actually. Another interesting thing about this word kuffar, because I got called that a few times in the 2.5 years that I was living in Malaysia. Actually, the level of Islam there is fairly moderate and tolerant to non-Muslims. They ain't so tolerant to the wrong kind of Muslim. Like if you're a Shia Muslim in Malaysia, you get a pretty rough ride, especially like in some of the northern states. 2 days before Flight 370 went missing, I'm not making this up, you can go and Google it, look it up. 2 days before Flight 370 went missing, there were big sweeps happening in the northern territories against Shia Muslims where entire families, including babies in swaddling, were placed in prison cells for owning Shia Muslim literature. They ain't angry at non-Muslims, they're angrier there at the wrong type of Muslim. Kuffar as an Arabic word actually means, so I went and looked it up. I sort of wonder what it means. Like if somebody calls me that, are they using it the right way? Oh, the thing that tipped me over was people were calling Sufis. Muslims were saying that Sufis who sing the praises of God are kuffar. And I was like, but they're Muslim, but you call them kuffar. Okay, let me go and look this stuff up. So kuffar is an Arabic word that actually implies, it's very old, it has an implicit meaning of burying or hiding something in the dirt. That's a kuffar. Hides the truth in the dirt. And as I recall, there's like different types of kuffar, but you have to be a kuffar, have to know the truth of God. So as far as we're concerned as psychologists and philosophers, not theosophers, you have to know the truth of reality. You have to know the way the world really works. And the truth of God in this context at that time, in that area of the world, in that piece of history was, there's one God, not multiple gods. This was not the first time that war had been fought. It had been going on for a while. Monotheism goes back to the Egyptians. There were Egyptians who were the first monotheists who were like, you shouldn't be worshipping all these different gods. You should be worshipping one God. And they would kill people and they would destroy religious iconography in that effort. The first biggest one to do that, the big pharaoh who did that was Akhenaten. He's the dude who looks really creepily like President Obama, if you go and look at pictures of him. I think he looks creepily like him. And he was the first guy who officially and strongly advocated monotheism, which was the worship of the sun, the one sun, Amun-Ra. And some people say that's why at the end of Christian phrases we say Amen. It refers to the Son, God, the one true God. Anyway, I'm digressing now. So the people who knew about reality but who hid that truth from their brothers and sisters, they were called the kuffar because they buried the truth. They hid it in the dirt. That's a kuffar. Somebody who knows the truth but hides it, that's a kuffar. So when they actually were rounding up people who were non-Muslims, who were polytheists and animists, they weren't kuffar. They actually technically weren't, because you have to know the truth and deny it. Back to narcissists. These are people who are deceivers. These are people who know the truth and who deny it. And they turn us into kuffar. How do they do that? Well, by filling us with guilt and with shame, they cause us to hide truth. After you've been abused, one of your longest term tendencies when you're carrying the complex PTSD and you manifest symptoms of borderline is you will become very deceptive and slippery as it pertains to the truth, especially as it pertains to the truth about your pain. So that when you're in a therapeutic or a coaching situation, when the coach and the therapist is getting to the point where you feel like this is a painful thing that you don't want to deal with, you will start to be deceptive. You will speak with the forked tongue, and you won't tell the truth. You're being a kuffar. The other element of this that it makes it a good metaphor is the stuff that gets hidden in the darkness and in the dirt, the soft, moist dirt, will rot the quickest. It will get stinky, it will get infected, and it will eventually bubble and be full of pus and then drop off. But if you get it in the sun and you tell the truth and you get it out there and you speak it and you expose it and you can make yourself vulnerable in a therapeutic context, in a coaching context, or just as a human being, you'll find that you get healthier, that you get better, even as you submit to that which is sunlight, which is the sun, which, you know, it then says, okay, I'm obviously not in control, I'm not in power here, I need to submit to something else that is higher than me, that actually can heal me. Again, not really, that sounded very religious, but I'm saying from a philosophical and a psychological point of view, this is the kind of thing that we need to be doing in order to cure ourselves of the effects long-term of narcissistic abuse. That got real, like, meandering, didn't it? Damn, we've got to shake it off. If you want to know more about overcoming the effects of being in an abusive relationship, I have a course which is available in the link below, and you can get that. And the feedback I'm getting so far is that it's cool and it's helping people. A bunch of it's got some videos, some audios to help you recondition your brain and the neural connections, because they're probably, if you're struggling right now, there's probably things that are misfiring. There's probably an emergency button that's stuck on in your brain, in your body, and it's sending an alarm that is running every day, which is why you feel so anxious and you can't sleep properly and you're dreaming about this person and obsessing over them, is because there's an alarm that's running inside of you going, We need to do something about this, which this course, if you listen to it and you pay attention, it will help to switch that alarm off and to calm you and to soothe you and to bring you back down to sanity. There's a bunch of written exercises there that will help you to expose that which is hidden in the dirt and bring it out into the sunlight. Almond Ra. That hurt my throat. Okay guys, that's enough for today. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you've had the Overcome Narcissistic Abuse course, and I know a bunch of you have, and you liked it, can you please post a comment below that says, hey, I thought it was pretty cool. It like totally helped me and stuff. That would be great, and I would appreciate it. That's it. Thank you very much for your time and for your paying attention, and I will speak to you again very soon.